Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's August 15, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. And we want to thank Kit's son, Bill, for helping some of the tech. But it's really an honor and a pleasure to be here with Kit Basquin. Is that right? How to pronounce it, Kit?
Absolutely perfect.
And where are you calling in from, Kit?
I live in New York City, Manhattan.
Oh, how cool is that? And the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
What is the best thing for a human being? I think people need to have goals and
Yeah,
and and to try to accomplish some of them. And if they do, that's good for them.
yeah, that's beautiful. And what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Probably written. I mean, I'm a writer and I read a lot of stuff. And if I see it in print, then I usually remember it.
Now, did you become a reader because your parents told you to read on your own, or they did it as an example?
I was a very slow reader because I had trouble with my eyes. I couldn't pull them together. And so I could not read until the third grade. I didn't know which word to read. They popped all over the page. And I gradually learned how to pull my eyes together. And then I could read. But I consider myself a writer, really.
Yeah. And so, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, it's very natural to gather information. You can't live without gathering information. If you go through anything, you get information on it.
So you think it's more innate or more invented to gather information?
I think it's innate. I don't think
Yeah.
you can live unless you gather information. And
Yeah,
eventually you have to use some of it to get on to the next step.
that's it. And the next step, I like that. So fill in the blank, Kit. I don't know what I think until I.
I don't know what I think until I read about it and
Yeah,
and then reflect on it.
read about it and reflect. Very good. Because McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. So I like you adding that extra step, reflect on it. Very good. Can humans think without language?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I mean, you get mute people who who can't talk, but they think.
Yeah. Chomsky says that a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, first of all, you look. You have to look and observe how people are acting and what the environment is and whatever clues you can get from other people. I mean, it's never in a vacuum. There's always stuff around.
Yeah, beautiful. And your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
It's hard to tell. I think feeling beings.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah. These are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Well, it depends what kind of person you are. I think thinking is a function of the soul if you're a reflective kind of person and probably a kind person.
Yes. I love that word. And the second Turing question is, can machines think?
No, they can be programmed to give back information, but they cannot think.
Yeah. Do thoughts create emotions?
Oh, they're certainly interrelated. I mean, emotions come from a lot of different things: feelings, sight, um, certainly thoughts. It's a combination of things.
Yeah. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I more pursue accomplishment. I am driven.
Wow.
As a friend of mine from Montana says, I'm a Mack truck with a good paint job.
Oh my God. That's a Mack truck with a good paint job. That's good. Did I just say that? Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning? Did I just ask that? I lost.
I think you just asked that.
I just asked that. I am going crazy. Forgive me. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we are detecting it, or more so creating it?
I think we're detecting it. I think that we have to tune in to what's going on in order to detect it through consciousness.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of light.
There's a poet, Audre Lorde, and she said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague, Yvonne Rayner, responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, I think you're talking about writers, and you can read somebody's writing and you can kind of know how they did it, but you can't do it exactly the same way.
Right. So what tool do you gravitate towards the most?
Writing.
Yeah. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
All kinds of things. My grandchildren, my children, things that I've done in the past, things that I have to do in the future. I think of all these things, and often I write down a note if it's something I can do something about.
Yeah. It's interesting, Kit, because at my mom's funeral service, I said, there's a lot of people in this room who worried that Dolores worried too much. And I think it's a fine line. What's the difference between worry and concern? Because I mean, if you're worrying about your grandchildren, isn't that just concern?
Yeah, it's mostly concern.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a little worry is okay.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't stop you in your tracks totally, and it doesn't. I mean, I keep going.
That's good. Keep going. So McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. Musicians, painters, writers are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
It's just probably too hard to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, I think artists they do reveal all kinds of things if you pay attention, but it's, you can't always cope with what's out there.
Yeah. Do artists have moral obligation?
That's a very fine line. I don't think that the actual, say, I'll talk about painters. I don't think that the image has to be moral or not. It doesn't really mean he is or he isn't. I think the artist is separate from the artwork.
That is an important thing, I think, is how do you separate the art from the artist? Beautiful. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm not really afraid of ideas. I take on the new. I try to be flexible. I try to move forward.
Yeah.
And the old stuff I can't do a lot about. I worry about it, but
Yeah.
gone is gone.
can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Oh boy. Probably when I was a little girl, about age 5 or something. I don't know what I would have thought about. Probably, I don't know. I don't know. No, I can't.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, it's a blessing. You got to have it. You got
Yeah.
to, you must have it to do anything.
Kid, tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, Mary Ellen Butte, the pioneer animator, who was a friend of my mother's, they grew up together in Houston and then moved to New York at different times. Mary Ellen Butte believed in me, and she even read my stories. I don't think she was much more interested in theater and drama than she was in writing. But I'm sorry, I lost the question.
No. What was it? What do you think you mainly got from Mary Ellen? What's the
I got from Mary Ellen that drive. You have to keep at it, because she had very little money, and she was a woman, and in her day she started her first animated film was in 1934. I mean, it was really hard for women to be in film in 1934. It's still hard for women to be in almost anything.
anything? Amazing. So that's a beautiful trait. Now, someone within your immediate family, the same question, they had an impact on you.
Well, certainly I have 3 children. The middle one is an adopted Korean, and we don't interact a lot. But the other 2, both named Bill, one transgender and the other is a guy. I think they've had an impact on me, both of them. They're very talented, and I want them to be proud of me.
Yeah. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yeah, I was raised as an Episcopalian. My grandfather was an Episcopal minister, and we were always taken to St. Bartholomew's Church, which is Episcopal. Of course, now I sing in 2 churches, and one's Episcopal and one's Catholic. I don't worry too much about the religion.
Wow, you're a singer. That's beautiful. Do you pray?
I do say prayers at night, yes.
Yeah. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
That's a very good question. I don't believe that people are basically evil. I think things happen to them, and they become unkind and not nice people.
Yeah.
And do horrible things that would certainly be considered evil.
I get that answer, and it's really the one I love to hear, that we're all capable of being evil. But Kit's is sort of the deeper question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up with a few thinkers. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, I think that the people that you consider your enemy probably don't like you, and they are perfectly happy for you to consider them an enemy. I think you have to. I think you have to be nice to enemies. I think you have to treat them as well as you possibly can,
Yeah.
and then they lose interest in you.
That's beautiful. I love it. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, we do live life, but usually if you go to a play, for instance, you get some insight or some possible options on how to deal with problems, because often a play will present problems. Um, and as far as the reality, I mean, you know, the trees are out there, sure, but if you draw them or something, then you have a picture that's around you. Maybe you don't see trees from your window.
Yeah, very good. And so, Kit, sort of walk us through your tipping points in your career pursuits. What did you go, what are you studying in high school? Then what did you study in college? Where was that tipping point where you wanted to go to study art history? The tipping point where you wanted to become a writer?
Yeah, they're really two kind of different things. I went to Spence School, which is a very excellent school in New York, 12 years. And in high school, we had an art history teacher, Margaret Scolari Barr, who was Alfred Barr's wife, the director of the Museum of Modern Art. And she was an incredible art history teacher. I mean, she would walk us through museums very fast. We had to focus. And she was very demanding and knew a lot. So I got interested in art history in high school, and we used Gombrich's A Story of Art. But I went on to I got into Wellesley, and I thought, well, I'll study art history in Wellesley. But my mother went to Wellesley. She did not graduate. She got sick after her third year, and so she left. And I told her, oh, I got into Wellesley. I thought she'd be pleased. She wasn't pleased. She said, well, if you go to Wellesley, you won't have time to sing. That was not true. But I had no confidence as a high school senior. And I thought she was telling me I would fail. Well, eventually I figured out she didn't want the competition because she knew if I went to Wellesley, I would graduate. However, the irony of that is that going to Goucher College, which did not have particularly good art history, I majored in history because that was better there. I got to sing under the direction of Nadia Boulanger, the famous French teacher, because she was conducting Fauré's Requiem at the Peabody Conservatory of Music in Baltimore and using the Goucher Glee Club along with the Harvard Freshman Glee Club to sing. And it was one of the high points of my life.
Oh my God. I never. So really, besides a writer and an art historian, you pursued singing your whole career.
Well, I'm just a choral singer. I sing with a group. I'm not a
just. You studied with Nadia Boulanger and you're just a choral singer. Come on.
I enjoy it. I will say when I was married, I did not sing at all. I didn't have an opportunity. My husband didn't really help me out with that at all. So as soon as I got a divorce, then I signed up for voice lessons with a neighbor.
Well, let's just stay on music for a second because I'm really curious. Your interest in music. What did you first hear growing up that made you want to be a singer?
I didn't think of it that way. My mother played the piano and she played popular songs. And my father, who had a beautiful bass voice, would always sing the hymns in church. And eventually I would, sing along with him. And then at Spence, we always had music from the early grades on, always had music. And in high school, I was in the Glee Club, and Hugh Ross was the conductor of the Glee Club. And, he taught us solfege and we sang classical music. So, I mean, it was, throughout my life. And then, of course, I was in the Glee Club in college. When I got out, when I first started working, I didn't sing. And when I was first married, I didn't sing. But after the divorce, then I got back to it.
What's the function of music?
Oh, well, music is such a joy. It's a communicator.
Yeah. Nadia Boulanger told Quincy Jones, your music can never be more or less than you are as a human being. What do you think she meant by that?
Oh, I totally see that. I mean, because when you play music, either on the piano or you sing it, you're interpreting it. and you have to have the, something in you to interpret it. And a really great pianist doesn't necessarily play exactly as it's written. The timing and everything else is that person's, and it has to do with their feelings and their soul.
How beautiful. And I love you use the word play. We don't work music, we play music. Walter Patter's great quote, all art aspires to the condition of music, like painting, poetry, literature. All of them wish they could be as cool as music is.
Well, of course, I consider writing to be, you want to read it, and you think of it as music. It has to sound right.
That's where you cross over. That's sense ratio shifting. Yeah.
The writing has to have a rhythm, kind of like music.
Well, there's perfect lead in. You have ESP. Aaron Copeland says the 4 elements or ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. How do you, in your singing, how do you focus or integrate melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color?
You don't think of it in those terms. You're just trying to follow the music and the conductor. Right. Whoever is leading you, you want to try to follow him. Come in when he wants you to come in and stop when he wants you to stop. And loud and soft, usually the conductor interprets it for you.
Right. Another friend says the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. So technique, you've learned how to sing. Theory, you know what chord or structure. How does one acquire taste?
I think either you have it or you don't. I will translate it into fashion. I mean, I think I was born with a fashion sense. And when I go into a store, I can pick out clothes that look good. And people with no fashion sense, absolutely, they pick out the wrong stuff and they put the wrong stuff with it. They just don't have it.
Wow. And so along with this word of taste, McLuhan said song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Any comment?
Well, they're related. I mean, usually if you're singing, for instance, you're singing in a language, and that would affect the music to some degree, that the length of the words, the kinds of syllables in the words. I think they're related.
What's more fundamental, music or language?
Language. You have to have it.
Right. A couple more music questions. I'm really intrigued that you have been involved in music like that. And Ruth Draper, when you perform like in front of people, Ruth Draper says the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. That sounds great, but how do you do that?
Well, I think that's a little extreme. Certainly, if you have a responsive audience, and you don't always have a responsive audience, you would get some feedback from them, and you would be enthusiastic and so forth. But you don't get that much from the audience.
Wow, that's good. And so Leonard Cohen says, the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
Risk is part of creativity. You have to have the courage to be creative. For instance, if you're a singer, to interpret the music. If you're a painter, to do whatever it is you're going to do. And it takes risk. It's not, nobody tells you exactly how to do it, and you have to have the courage to go out and do it.
Boy, you brought up the word perfect. Again, you have ESP. What does courage mean to you now?
Oh, it's crucial to me now, because I need it. I'm trying to publish a memoir, and I really want to have it published by Yale. And and it takes a lot of courage. And I'm gonna make a case, because Mary Ellen Butte went to Yale for a year. I took a summer course at Yale. I gave all my papers to the Beinecke at Yale. So I'm going to make a case to them, and I would really love it if they would publish my book. But it will take all my courage to write this thing, to present it, and they will, or they might not, go for it.
Well, that's good. Let's get into archiving in a second, but one more question in this regard. Viola Spolin, I don't know if you know her. She's an amazing woman who was a social worker in Chicago, and she gave role-playing exercises that actually developed Second City and Saturday Night Live, and she kind of invented comedy improv. She was a social worker.
Wow.
But she has this great line. She says, if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it. What role does struggle play in your creative process?
I think there's always struggle in the creative process. I mean, it's hard. You have to want to do it and be disciplined and determined, and somehow some of that comes across in writing and singing, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And since you brought up your the archives, I'm very curious, because we're researching a big archive project right now, because people get to be our age and they're like, what are you going to do with all your boxes of stuff? And let my kids take care of it. But in your regard, you knew they were valuable. Your notes and papers were valuable. What was that process? Did you have to go and convince them, or they knew from your resume? How was that getting archived? Yeah.
Yale took all of my Butte papers, or 99% of them. I think some of them were in a closet and I didn't find them, but they took all the papers. And because she was she won a Cannes Film Festival prize on one of her films, she was a famous person. They were happy to have them, and she had gone there for a year, and one of her classmates was Thornton Wilder's sister, so one of them. And I just called I think the film department and said, or I had to call the Beinecke, and I said, would you like to have these? And they said, yes, we'll send someone down to pick them up. I said, I'm moving in 2 weeks, and I would like to do something with all these boxes of papers. And they came down and picked them up. And that's now, cool. Of course, now I have all my stuff from my memoir, because I've had journals from the 1980s on. I've got a living room that is shelves from one end to the other, and 3 levels of them are journals.
Now, will those go to the same archive?
Well, I don't think Yale would want them, but I would really like for someone to take them. If I get a publisher for my memoir, I would really like, because the journals are really good for women to study. They they go into how you dealt with stuff.
Yeah. Because, the bottom line is, if you go with the sort of Eastern philosophy, is to be here now, live in the moment. Even Wyndham Lewis, big in the McLuhan and James Joyce world, said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So I'm just curious, what is this about humans wanting to collect and gather and preserve their history when they're trying to live in the present and move on? So is this urge that the Egyptians had to put some of their stuff in their coffin with them, is that innate or invented? Any thoughts on that, archiving?
Well, my feeling is that especially in my memoir, I mean, women have changed so much. I mean, in the 1960s, the whole world changed for women, and all of a sudden they were supposed to be independent and this and that. And I was not raised that way. I was raised to be a dependent housewife, and it took me quite a while to break loose of all that. And you see it in the writing. And so I feel that it would be a valuable study for women.
Yeah.
Or they can just use my memoir if it gets published.
Exactly. That's good. And so going to writing now, what did you grow up reading that was like that tipping point to say, I want to write? Where was there that moment when you were, because you grew up a reader?
That's a very good question. I've thought about it, and I mean, I went to Spence, so we were always reading the classics. Every summer we had to do a reading list and so forth. But I do remember I lived on Riverside Drive, and I had a younger sister, and I remember um, I think I had just graduated from high school, and I was walking along Riverside Drive up toward Riverside Church, which has a carillon, and the carillon was playing. You could hear it, of course. And I thought, I'm going to be a writer. I don't know why I thought of it then, but there was the music from the carillon.
That's amazing.
I thought, but then it took me a while to get to it, because I placed really high in the English classes at Goucher, which is where I went to college. But I got a really bad teacher, and he destroyed my confidence. And he said, you wrote better coming into my classes than leaving. Oh. Well, thanks a lot. It took me years to get over that. And finally, I got a good teacher for an aesthetics course my junior year. And I thought, well, I can't be that bad if he likes my writing.
What a story. Thanks for telling us, Kit. But just maybe a couple writers that you read early on that really had an impact on you?
Well, Laura Ingalls Wilder, I read early, the children's books, and I loved all of her books. Jane Austen, Little Women, of course, I love that. Those are the two that I think of, and they're both women, interestingly.
Yeah, that's great. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium. So knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter and a camera or projector extends our eyelid. Even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, might extend consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? What humanness, whether it's a keyboard or a pen?
Reflection. I mean, you have to reflect when you write. You have to think about it, and then you go back and you edit it and you rethink and so forth.
Oh, that's a great answer. I never get reflection. So I spoke with Michael Apted, the filmmaker, about 40 years ago, and I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know that Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922 in France. But in 1980, it really flourished with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted says, well, because we've learned to take in information faster. And I ask this with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I think we do take in information faster. And if you notice in the newspaper, they have lots and lots of headlines and then little tiny paragraphs as you go along. So in case you don't read the whole article, you get high points. And I think that people are in a hurry and they don't want to spend the time to read the long, slow thing. And they take in the high points.
Is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
Oh yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
You have to you have to focus. You have to pay attention. But I often listen to classical music and read or write. Certainly when there are children around, you get interrupted, and you have to be able to multitask.
Kit, what was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch or your guess?
Well, I don't understand the question. Say it again.
What was the motive of the cave artist?
A motive for what?
Well, why did they draw on the caves? What was their motive? What do you think their motive was?
Well, they were there and they had nothing else to do. And they were, the walls were their paper, so to speak. Yeah. And if they were creative, it just came to them, I guess. They draw on it.
Yeah. Do you think storytelling is more innate or more invented?
Well, I think some people are very good storytellers, and that's innate. And then, but then you can also you can learn how to do it. It's a combination.
Yeah. The experimental filmmaker Hollis Frampton said, narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
Oh yeah, I forget to die all the time. I mean, I think about it from time to time, and you know, I want to be sure that I mean, I'm 82, and I want to be sure that I clean out, you know, my papers and my books and my clothes, and so that my children don't have to do it. But I don't think about it all the time. I can't. Too busy living.
Beautiful. Did you get that sort of positive drive more from the way your parents raised you or on your own?
Certainly not my parents. My mother was not positive. Um, I I got it by gradually accomplishing stuff. And I found that if I was determined and that it helped. And then I think when I was in about the 8th grade, I had a very good social worker who taught me speed reading. Um, and and she was very positive. And Mary Ellen Butte was very positive. Whenever she was around, she was positive. So I think that I got it also from people.
What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Well, you got to have conviction or you won't do anything.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of compromise. That's okay. Nothing wrong with a compromise. I mean, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Oh boy. Well, I didn't know that I had particular skills early on because I had no confidence, but I think I must have had them, and I must have been fairly intelligent. Certainly, drive is how I got everywhere. I still am. I'm absolutely driven. I mean, I don't sit back and just rest. I'm thinking or reflecting. Did that answer your question?
Oh no, that answered it. Yeah. And it's funny because the question I used to ask is ambition based more on fear or joy? Your observations of humans in general, is ambition based more on fear or joy?
Joy. I don't worry about the fear at all. I mean, I don't expect to get what I aim for. Like I'd really love to have Yale publish my memoir. I don't really expect that they will do it, but I'm going to make a good case for it.
You go. That's beautiful. Is loyalty based on reason?
No.
Yeah. What do you think it's based on?
Devotion.
Yeah.
I think you're just, if you're loyal, you can see that people are going in the wrong direction and they need you.
Yeah. What a great word, devotion. So T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Oh boy. You have wonderful quotes. My God, I don't know how you come up with all these and can even pull them out. Um, my inner dialogue is in words.
Yeah.
I mean, reflections.
Yeah. Two of my film heroes have these mantras: ignore yourself, there is no self expression. In fact, the great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor said, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
I think you are a vehicle. I think this stuff comes into you, and if you're driven and determined, that then you shape it. I'm not sure that exactly answered your question.
No, that answers it well. But the follow up is, can art making be egoless? Can writing, art making, poetry writing, making music be egoless?
Yes, I think so. I think that you do it because you love it or you want to do it, and you don't worry about whether people think it's wonderful or not. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, it's nice if they like it. It's
Yeah.
nice if you get applause, but you do it anyway.
Yeah. That reminds me of Warhol. He said, don't worry about what people think of your art. Just keep making it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I do have a funny follow up. Was Freud right?
He made a lot of mistakes.
Good. That was a good follow up. Okay. Kit, is perception reality?
It's a facet of reality. Different people will see the same thing differently depending on what they're coming from and what they're aware of.
Yeah.
It's like a point of view on reality.
It's a point of view, really. Yeah, McLuhan has a great line. Understanding is not having a point of view. Like, in order to get the big picture view, you don't really want to have a bias or lean towards one way or the other. You want to see the big picture. But do you think humans are hardwired to have points of view?
I think you do have a point of view, but you don't have to pull it out. You can, like, for instance, a critic who is writing about something. He doesn't want to destroy the person that he's writing about. And he may think whatever it is isn't too good, but he'll be very careful not to exactly put it that way.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like some of these film critics like Pauline Kael and Manny Farber. They were amazing writers. So it's almost like you don't even have to agree with them on their opinions on the film. It's like they're putting words together in a way to teach you like great writing.
Yeah,
But
and analyzing.
in analyzing, that's another great word.
Yeah.
Because you sort of touched on this word truth. Louis Buñuel, the filmmaker, says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Now, most people go, oh, that's true. I love that. And one person finally challenged me. He says, no, well, that's bullshit. Because if I'm seeking something, it's because I want to find it. And so I formed this question is, if the journey is more important than the destination, why do we have to name or seek a destination?
Well, you have to go in a certain direction. You have to have a destination. You don't have to reach it, but you have to be going somewhere.
Yeah. McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, saying, artists dream awake. So we all have this ability at night to create these amazing scenarios. And it's not to be elitist, but artists can do that while they're awake. They dream awake. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
I refer to it more as reflection. I'm not a big dreamer. Fantasy is not something that I'm particularly good at. I try to be more realistic. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that answers the question, but it's, can you recall any dream that has, just briefly describe it in a few words or a sentence, that has occurred to you recently or years ago or has stuck with you? Some dream scenario that you can recall?
Oh boy. Well, sometimes I think about being successful and in a sense, getting accolades for doing something well.
Yeah. Well, that's if you don't have dreams, your dreams can't come true. So all the power to you. McLuhan was great at rewording. So I drop all these quotes, but I think what I learned from studying Marshall was the point is to take the quote a little farther. You can get the epiphany or the insight, but how do you reinvent it or reboot it? And so Browning said, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is heaven for? And Marshall reworded it and said, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is a metaphor?
Very clever. Very clever.
So, how and why do you use metaphor in your writing?
Metaphors are great because they're very creative and they sound musical, and they add color in a sense to the writing. I probably don't use enough metaphors, but they enrich the writing.
Yeah. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life might be pointless? I'm not saying life is pointless, but why is it so hard for us to consider that it might be?
I don't know. I mean, I'm here. I've got to live it, whether it's pointless or
Yeah.
not. You know.
Yeah. That's good. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Getting Yale to publish my memoir.
Keep going at it, Kit. That's it. Tell me, you've been writing for many years. Tell me one major element that's stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Well, I think that I tend to use a fairly simple language when I'm writing to communicate, and I think that has stayed pretty much the same. And much later, years later, I read Zinsser, Zinsser, and he talks about that. I mean, taking out the extra words, and that's kind of what I've always been doing.
Wow. Well, that's a good element that stayed the same. What's one element that's changed over the years?
I'm putting much more thought in it, much more reflection, personal thought. I mean, on the paper, I put it, in words.
What do you think kicked you over to do that? What was the cause?
I keep reading, and the really good writers do it. And I see, oh, listen, if they can do it, I guess I have to do it.
That is beautiful. I love that. So Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, certainly reading. I mean, I couldn't read until the 3rd grade. I couldn't pull my eyes together. And eventually I learned to speed read. And I have a PhD, so I've done a lot of reading.
That's great. That's a good example. American Indians, indigenous, Eastern culture respect their elders. How do you explain Western culture's disdain for old age?
It's a very good question. I think it's just the way that you are raised. We expect something of our parents, and they often fall short. I guess some parents are better than others.
Yeah.
But if you're raised like I think the Asians or the Native Americans to honor the older people, it doesn't matter if they fall short. You honor them anyway.
It's amazing. Why do we turn against? I mean, the cultures used to celebrate having the elders with the grandchildren, live in the same house. It's just so much separation. It seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when?
Anger can be a production emotion when it drives you to the discipline needed to do something that's a lot of work.
Yeah. I asked my friend who wrote comedy with Robin Williams, can satire be destructive? And he says, that's the job of satire. But, if me or you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill us, some people think dying is destructive. So, Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the role? What's the function of satire?
Well, I think satire is supposed to be funny, but in some cultures they don't don't think of it as funny. They think of it as too realistic. I mean, it depends who's interpreting it.
Yeah. Well, what's the function of laughter?
Well, first of all, it feels good.
Yeah.
It's a physical thing, and it's a very positive emotion. I mean, it's fun to laugh.
Yeah. McLuhan loved to quote Steve Allen, who said, "Behind every joke, there's a grievance." Any thought on that? And I don't like the word every, but behind jokes, there's a grievance.
Well, I think jokes tend to do an extreme twist on something, and if a grievance can make you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, Gurdjieff said laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. But, we grew up with Mad Magazine and all this, it was called fake news. It was satire news. And now fake news is like disinformation.
Yeah.
So this changeover, like we grew up with maybe watching Walter Cronkite or reading the New York Times. It seems now that younger people get their news from watching Colbert or comedy shows that go into the news. Do you think this kind of comedy news more activates or more pacifies people?
I think it pacifies people. I am not a TV watcher. I watch practically no TV.
Your whole life?
My whole life. I mean, we didn't.
That is amazing. I salute you. That's really good.
We did not have it until I was in high school, and by that time, I had too much homework to do it.
Yeah.
I had 4 hours of homework a night at Spence. And I just never really, I mean, when I was married, my husband liked to watch it, so I would watch shows with him. But then I had to deal with the kids, and, I just never found it convenient to sit down and watch much TV. I really almost never do. I don't even have a TV in my bedroom. There's one in the guest room. If I want to watch Channel 13 for something, once in a while I'll go in there, but I just don't watch it much.
Yeah. Believe me, that's why you're probably a great writer. I was raised in front of the TV. That's why I probably read Finnegan's Wake well. It's all discombobulated. But, let's go into Mary Ellen Butte a little. Your history with her has been amazing. And I was always intrigued that a woman who kind of invented, there's your book right there. Amazing.
I don't know if you can see it.
Oops. Yes, we can see it. And it's called Pioneer Animator.
So happy it got out there because the film people will get it. It'll go into, and I want that. They're the ones I want to have it.
And the feminist film theory, that's big. Animators, it's big. But, it's interesting because Nam June Paik and all the video art just got written up big time in Art Forum. But Mary Ellen Butte was actually doing electronic animation in the 30s. I mean, what I understand is she invented electronic animation.
She did it. I don't think she did that in the 30s. She did animation in the 30s, I think, but she was very early to use electronics, and she got a Cannes Film Festival prize in '65. So she was doing it, in the '60s or late '50s. She would pursue people that knew what they were doing. I mean, she had smart people around her. She would reach out to them.
Yeah, but it's so funny because what the hidden ground to me of Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce is how electricity, how radio, telegraph, which telegraph is what they claim is the beginning of social media, then television is in Finnegan's Wake. It comes out in 39. TV's just starting. And the hidden ground is electricity. So she's delving into this with animation, and then she makes isn't her first live action film Passages from Finnegan's Wake?
It's not her first one. She did a short before that.
But it's her first feature.
It's her first feature, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe talk about that transition. How did she go from animation to tackling filming a book, especially Finnegan's Wake?
Well, it was hard. She thought that Finnegan's Wake. She saw a play at Barnard of I think it was Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah,
Or
Mary Manning's play. Yeah,
Mary Manning's play. And I mean, I'm sure Mary Ellen never read Finnegan's Wake. It would have taken forever, and she wouldn't have bothered with it. But she read Mary Manning's play, and she thought it would be fun to make, you know, she thought it was creative, and she thought it'd be fun to do something. I don't think she realized how difficult it was going to be, and I think it was hard for her when she used very inexperienced actors, because that's all she could afford. There were young people that were acting in New York, and she just, you know, drove the language into them. They practice and practice, and then she'd record it. I think if she had realized how challenging it would be, she might not have done it, but I don't think she realized. And then, you know, she just kept at it.
In that whole story, I know we talked about this in your great Zoom you did at the New York Finnegan's Wake group, is there's some story about she didn't subtitle it. And then it came here to LA at the Laemmle theaters, and they were going to show it at Cannes. And they said, oh, no, you should subtitle it. And I think that was a big process. Maybe you could talk about that a little.
Well, I believe that she got the idea of the subtitles at Cannes.
At Cannes, that was it.
They reviewed the film, and she didn't have subtitles, and it came up that it would be helpful if she did. And so by the time the film got to New York, she added the subtitles.
Yeah, I think that was a very smart move.
Yeah, it's very helpful, because you can't follow the dialogue all the time. It's, you know, first of all, it's hard to understand, and it's pretty fast. Right.
And what do you think the whole Joyce gestalt is? The attraction to Joyce in general, because, you know, people go, Ulysses is one of the greatest books ever written, along with the Bible and Shakespeare. And then in Finnegan's Wake, he went too far. I know some of my fellow Finnegan's Wake people are starting a Portrait of an Artist reading club now. And then there's The Dead, the short stories. What is the attraction to Joyce in the big world of literature? What do you think?
Well, of course, Joyce was brilliant and was a talented writer. And I think that he, the earlier stuff is easier to read. Finnegan's Wake is very hard to read. I had to take a course to read it. You have to sit down, and sometimes you get nothing out of a whole page.
Yeah.
It's just sound of the words, but you just don't get much. I think that probably Finnegan's Wake showed how clever he was just to be able to write it.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't understand it and didn't want to read it, I think people enjoy some of the earlier ones a lot more.
Yeah.
And they have insight into people. That's why you read things.
Exactly. The insight into people. I like that. But where did you take your course? In college on Finnegan's Wake?
It was postgraduate, and I took it at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. And my teacher, oh gosh, I can't think of her name now, but she was teaching it, and I took a whole course to read Finnegan's Wake.
Wow.
Whole semester. And we would read a certain number of pages per week, and that's the way you could get through it. And then we'd go over maybe 10 lines.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, you know, there's a line, Kit, that goes, you create what you resist. The comedian Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate. And James Joyce even said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Louis Buñuel said, thank God I'm an atheist. So it's sort of like this idea that one creates what one resists. I'm not saying you, but your thoughts on this line, you create what you resist.
Uh, that's hard for me. I mean, I was certainly raised as an Episcopalian, and I'm very loose on religion now. I care about the music, but I don't care whether it's in a Catholic church or an Episcopal church. I just don't worry about the details.
Yeah. You mean you find that the choral community, that connectedness, is sort of what attracts you to it all.
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah.
The camaraderie. Yeah.
It's my social life.
Yeah. They say where did I see that recently? What music does to people's brain chemistry when they're singing together.
It really, you feel like you're bound together somehow. You're connected.
Yeah.
And of course you have different parts and you have to wait and hear and interact with the other parts. It's really special if you enjoy it.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
Men have been given a lot of positive reinforcement that women never got. Women grew up with criticism, and they were supposed to look up to men. And I don't think, women have to feel equal to men. It takes courage.
Courage indeed. What caused matriarchy?
Oh, well, I mean, the mothers of the children are there, and you have to have mothers of children, and then in some cultures they were dominant and powerful. I don't know what caused it.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, is biology, the fact that women give birth.
Yeah.
On what occasion do you lie?
Oh, if I'm out socially with people and somebody needs encouragement and has either a singer or a writer or something, I don't call it lying. I may skirt around the truth a little bit to be supportive and encouraging.
Yeah. Utah Phillips said anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
I think you have to make your own rules.
Yeah.
I think that you just at some point you say, look, these rules that are out here, they don't apply to me. They don't work for me. I don't believe in them. I don't think they're good. And you have to make your own.
What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
Responsibilities, for instance, if you're raising children, you have to take care of them. You have to feed them. You have to get them to school and do safe things. That's a responsibility. A right is something else. I don't know. It varies.
Yeah. How do you find peace of mind?
Probably music.
Yeah. These are 5 quick, short Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head in a couple words. 1, who started it all?
Oh boy, it depends what you're starting.
Yeah. Are we going to make it?
I think we're all going to die.
3, where do we put it?
You got to put it out there.
4, who's cleaning it up?
Maybe it's not being cleaned up.
5, is it serious?
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't.
Beautiful. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I was very well behaved as a 12-year-old. I probably would not have caused much attention.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
Now, this question, you already have the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyways. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
A Mack truck with a good paint job.
I was going to say that earlier, but I mean, is that the title of your memoirs, or you're not revealing the title yet?
I don't know yet for sure. I hired an editor, and I'm not sure that she will accept that as a title.
But you did label it as a Mack truck with a good paint job?
I labeled one section that, and I like that.
That is beautiful.
So me. It is so me.
I love that. Now, they want to scent the glue in the binding of your autobiography. What smell?
Mint.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
In a park, and it would be made of metal.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
I don't know. I've been lucky.
Yeah. Well, the answer I get the most is fame, money, and heroin. Those are the three answers I get the most.
Never wanted heroin. I don't particularly want fame, and money only goes so far. You have to have enough.
Yep. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I see the cultural shift for women. I mean, they are becoming independent, and the younger men are really nicer to women. They're more respectful. And they share jobs. You see men taking baby carriages to the grocery store. You never used to see that.
Exactly.
And their wives are out working.
That's it. House dads. That's like when I saw my female friends at 50 fretting becoming their mothers. I didn't see my male friends fretting becoming their mothers, and most of us were raised more by our mothers. And Oscar Wilde said, men don't fret becoming their mothers, and that's their problem. So what's a question that remains unresolved for you?
Will I be successful?
Oh, Kit, you are a success in my opinion.
Thank you.
How has writing shaped your behavior?
Writing has moved me inside and by myself. I mean, which works because, I'm older and that's what happens to me anyway. I'm inside and by myself a lot. But that's what you need if you're going to write. You need to be pretty much inside and by yourself.
Wow. So Thornton Wilder, who you brought up earlier, amazing, total Finnegan's Wake freak, in 1928, he said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Oh, that's good.
You've laid your cards on the table for over an hour. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Success.
Yeah.
Really, success as a writer.
Yeah. And in closing, Kit, what a pleasure and enlightening time. I really appreciate this. What gives you the most optimism?
Past success.
There you go. Well, the great Dr. Seuss quote. I'll send it to you. I don't have it exactly memorized, but it's basically, don't fret that it didn't happen. Be happy that things did happen.
That's,
so,
very happy with some of the good things that happened. I mean, plenty of stuff happened that wasn't good, but a lot of good stuff happened.
Yeah.
You're amazing with all your quotes. I don't know how you keep them straight.
Well, thank you, Kit. It's not that hard. You have a little booklet of notes next to the laptop, but I've asked pretty much the same questions for 40 years, and it's been fun because it's always varied, and I usually learn a lot, and I'm grateful because the first question I ask is, what's the best thing for a human being? That's I got from Wilhelm Reich, who said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you, Kit. Thank you for your book and all your writing and for spending this time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for interviewing me. You're amazing.
And Kit, even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope we can keep talking forever and ever. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Kit.
Bye.